Hello, everyone. This is me. Don't see me very well. Like I said, this is more of a test stream than anything else. And until I get more cameras and a better setup, basically, you're gonna see my hands and part of the screen here. So, I'll introduce myself. My name is Hedgie. It's not actually, but I've been Hedgie for 13 and a half years since I met my husband, and that's what I call myself. I wrote a cookbook starting 25 years ago. Um, Food to me is love and memories and family, and one of the most powerful magics that I find in food is that if you have the recipes that your mother cooked or you went to your grandma's place and had, if you had recipes like those that were passed down in your family, the people are never really gone. The memories are never really gone because the scent of that food cooking, the taste of it, it brings back the memories that you had with those people. It brings back the love, it brings back the laughter and the memories. And unfortunately for me, our best cook in the family, who we all went to her house for all of the holidays. She used to have 20, 30 people come to her house, and she cooked everything from scratch. At Thanksgiving, she had 2 giant turkeys. She had all of the side dishes everyone loved. And she made 5 or 6 different pies. She made all the rolls. She did it all herself. And unfortunately, when Aunt Mebs died, rather suddenly, she didn't pass on any of her recipes. So all those recipes are gone. And I started, after she died, trying to find recipes, if anybody had any of them. We have one recipe from her that was written down and given to my mother. And other than that, they're gone. And I decided I wasn't going to let that happen again. I decided to go out and get all the recipes from everybody in the family that everybody associated with them and with good times. And I started writing a family cookbook, and from that it turned into Cooking with Hedgepigs, which is the name of my cookbook, which is so far 377 recipes strong between recovered family recipes that I managed to find in heritage cookbooks, heirloom sites where people put down their own family recipes, and found that some of these recipes that we always took for granted were over 100 years old and were basically unchanged. I mean, that was pretty cool. Thank you, Connor, for hosting us. And no, it is not yet. It is not yet published anywhere. It will be finished up this November, which I've taken part in for 3 years now, actually writing the cookbook with the NaNoWriMo. It was National Novel Writing Month. The goal was 50,000 words, and I did this for 3 years in a row, and I'm almost done with the book. The hardest part is cutting the recipes back, actually. I have both the family recipes that I've come up with. I have recipes that other family members have developed since and come up with, and I have a lot of my own recipes. So this recipe is just basically a test. It's something to do with leftovers. It is a pot roast sandwich, which unfortunately I don't have any leftovers for, so I'm going to have to start from scratch. It's a pot roast sandwich that's grilled with onions and mushrooms and mozzarella cheese, and we also have herbs and spices in it, and then it's basically just grilled to make it a nice hot sandwich. This is a Mayan sweet onion, which I prefer sweet onions. They don't have quite the bite that a regular onion does, and I know they're not necessarily popular all over the world, but they're pretty popular in the States. So you could do it with a regular onion though too, so that's fine. But um, the recipe you will find in the stream recipes, and that will be in the Discord. If someone can throw the Discord link up there. You can also do it with other cheese other than mozzarella, or leave it out if you don't. But if you don't like cheese, but who doesn't like cheese? It's kind of like bacon. Another interesting thing you'll find about my cooking is I don't cook with garlic at all. I also don't cook with pork because I'm allergic to both. Makes it interesting. And I am also not a fast cutter. But I manage not to lop anything off, so that's really what's important, isn't it? So to take this, you start by dicing your sweet onion, and about a half, I think, is enough for a pound of meat. And we will be taking a pound of stew meat to make this, and then a half of an onion, about 8 ounces of mushrooms, and about a cup of the broth that you would get from making your pot roast. You can also already have it into gravy, but I didn't have that either, so I will be also making gravy with flour and water. And okay, so there we get that, and I am going to start these off in just a saucepan, and I'm gonna put some margarine in the bottom of it, because what you're doing here is basically softening the mushrooms. And you can use butter, you can use margarine, you can use oil if you like. If you're using pure butter, and that is what we call a knob of butter, that is about a tablespoon and a half. And if you are using actual butter, I strongly recommend you put about a half a teaspoon of olive oil into it, so that it doesn't burn. Adding oil to it will make it so that you have raised the burning point of the butter, so that instead of scorching your butter and having disgusting scorched butter, you instead have the flavor of the butter, and you also have the onions, and they won't get that nasty scorching that you might have if you don't. This will also work well if you're doing anything with garlic in it, but as I said, you won't be finding that with me. I will note where you can put garlic into recipes, but you probably will not be seeing me actually cook with it. It would be pretty toxic to me. My garlic allergy is on the level of stopping my breathing, so it's on level with severe peanut allergies. And what you can't see here is that I am using a hand wash, one of those lovely alcohol hand sanitizers, and I tend to wash my hands very, very well before I cook. And one of the other things I do is that I make sure that if before I start cooking at all, I take and I use a fingernail brush underneath my nails, because I'm a little bit of finicky for that, so I want to make sure that I don't get anything out from underneath my fingernails into the food. So hi Dream Eaters, how are you doing? Welcome in today, and thank you everyone who's shown up. Andrew Mantis is my husband, and we are, well, awake is a good start. Awake is a really good start. Feel free to ask questions anytime you like. I'm kind of nervous at the moment, so I can't guarantee I'm really going to answer, but I'll try. This is my cooktop that I've got out here. It's It's a Farberware. It heats up pretty slowly, unfortunately, so that may slow us down a bit. I've got them in there. The next thing you need to do, as I said, if we follow in Discord, the recipe is there. Okay. I do not measure things the way normal people do. I tend to measure them in my hand. So when I say a 1/4 teaspoon of ground sage, I've got it in my hand here. It's how I was taught. I'm fairly accurate with it. I recommend if you're not accurate with it, if you're a beginning chef, that you actually, or a beginning cook, that you actually use measuring spoons. This is a lovely little thing. It's a rosemary grinder, and I find if you just leave the rosemary whole, it doesn't really do much for the food. You need to actually crush the rosemary in a mortar and pestle or between your fingers or in a grinder like this so that it activates the oils that are inside of it. This is dried rosemary. Fresh rosemary is a little better, but you use a lot less because the flavor is more intense because it has the oils already there at the surface and fresh. Parsley, sage, and rosemary are in a lot of my recipes. Thyme a lot less because it just kind of tastes like dirt to me. But I find with parsley, sage, and rosemary, you've pretty much got the area covered in spices. I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to this. And start giving it a little bit of a stir. As the margarine starts to melt. Let me see. So when I was 10 years old, my father had told me all about what a wonderful cook his grandmother and his mother were. And Mom worked outside the house and didn't do as much cooking as I guess a lot of women that in that particular age. And I'm 53 years old, so I'm up there. And we had the opportunity for me to start spending summers over at our family farm, which raised cattle. And my grandmother and aunt and grandfather lived over there with my cousins. And I went over when I was 10 and I asked Grandma to teach me to cook. And fortunately for me, she did. So I started cooking with Grandma, and I continued cooking for, well, the next 43 years. I learned the recipes from Grandma by the time I was about 18, and one of my first jobs, I went and worked in a kitchen, and I was just doing, basic prep work for the prep chef, and the chef liked the fact that I had some skills, and she made me her prep chef. And that worked for a while, and that was interesting. And I learned a lot from her. And then she made me her sous chef. And when she was happy with my performance as her sous chef, she asked me to go and get training at a culinary school. And we had one not terribly far away. And I went to the culinary school and I said I wanted to learn to cook, and they said great. And they had me go talk to the chef instructor, and they asked me about allergies, and I said, oh yes, I'm allergic to garlic. And they said, we can't teach you. I'm not sure why garlic was such an important thing. At the restaurant I was working at, they didn't use garlic at all. And at the time, you could find garlic in some kinds of cuisine, but you didn't find it in just everything like it seems to be now. You go to a place and there's garlic in the chicken, there's garlic on the salads, they've used garlic butter on all of the meat to finish it, and when they would do that, well, makes it so I have to make a lot of my food myself, and eating out is kind of rare. It has to be very, very careful. Anyway, um, yeah, the biggest thing is that garlic is a source of elemental sulfur. It is one of the biggest sources of elemental sulfur, and I'm allergic to sulfur in all of its forms, including fireworks. Found that out when I was 6, and also found out I was asthmatic at that time. So that was a fun evening. Um, so if I hadn't had a garlic allergy, my life probably would have been a whole lot different than it is. I started watching cooking shows on PBS, like The Frugal Gourmet, Graham Kerr. Um, no, I didn't actually watch um, Julia Childs. Her voice drove me through the wall, which is a pity, because her recipes are good in her cookbooks. Um, I got every cookbook I could get my hands on, starting with The Joy of Cooking. And I wrote down everything my grandmother taught me because Grandma never wrote any recipes down. To this day, I am the only one in the family that knows how to make her potato salad, because although everybody knows what's in it, nobody watched her enough, nobody helped her enough to realize that she cooked to a proportion. So that it was a certain number of potatoes to a certain number of celery to a certain number of onion to a certain number of pickles and so on down the list, so that no matter how big a potato salad Grandma made, it always tasted the same. And that was not something anybody was aware of. They just always went, doesn't taste like Grandma's. So I can actually produce it now, and nobody else can. Very hot pan. I am adding in mushrooms at this point. No, I did not use fresh mushrooms, which I normally would, but that's okay. This can be done with fresh meat. You can use it with leftover meat. You can use it with cans of, the roast beef that they have in the aisles for instance, emergency food. Oh, I need to move this forward so that you can see what I'm doing. Sorry. I've added beef broth and the mushrooms to it now, and I'm going to continue cooking that while I start working on the meat. And what I have here is stew meat. And this is actually not purchased. It is a gift from my cousin from her cows. I'm not sure which cow this is, but I believe this was the Guernsey that she had. Just need to make sure that it's in reasonable sized pieces, because stew meat can vary a lot. As you see there, as it's splitting out underneath my hand. Just need to make sure that it's all in there. So, 43 years spent reading cookbooks and watching cooking shows, discovering the wonder that's Food Network, and then about 2 years ago, I'd already been watching Twitch because of my husband. He had friends and he was always laughing we'll just say he was laughing a lot and loudly with this one particular New Zealand streamer who does gaming. And I thought Twitch was just streaming games. That's what I originally thought. And one day I accidentally hit the browse button and found out there were categories. And in those categories, there were food. And I was thinking, really? People cook food on stream? And people watch? So I decided to start watching. And I found food streamers. It was amazing. they, they were there, and it was this awesome new place to find where I found out that there were chefs that were there that were actual chefs, and there were home cooks. I did eventually find Connor, and it's just a really nice community. I mean, you don't find as many trolls as you find in places. I'm going to add the meat in here to the broth, onions, spices, and let that start cooking. Yeah, if you decide to, ooh, that's too heavy now. If you decide to sear it first or are actually using leftovers, that's a pretty good option too, but this will work. It'll get us to where we need to go, and all of the spices and the, ghosts of beef past that went into the broth will be there for this as well. Can you cook this? Can you push this a little closer to me since I'm pretty much done with this now? And there's the husband's fingers. All right then. So, now that we have touched meat, we once more take and find our hand sanitizer. Mr. Hedgie is very helpful, yes. Another thing. No! That was fun. Almost lost the meal over the side of the table. Sorry if that was loud, everyone. It was a scream of panic. We've already done that tipping over one time today. So, I lost track completely of what it was I was saying. Oh, washing my hands with hand sanitizer. Yeah, always very important to do that. Must continually wash your hands, especially if you're cooking meat and going back and forth between meat and veg. Anytime you handle raw meat, wash. If you use the knife on the raw meat, wash. Get a new knife. Really, food poisoning is not worth it. It really, really isn't. I'm making it more plain that I am washing my hands a lot, just to point out that just because you're in a home cooking, you should still have the same standards that you find in a restaurant, like you'll find at Connor's restaurant or any of the professional ones. The recipe is already posted in the Discord under Stream Recipes. That's where I will be posting the recipes that I cook and stream. Eventually, I will get a merch section in the front page here, and I will be selling ebooks of my recipe book, Cooking with Hedgepigs. And that'll be my family recipes and the ones that I've made up myself. Can you FedEx me your food? No. Unfortunately, I cannot. Maybe at some other time I could, but at this point in time, no. I can, however, give you the recipes, and if you have any problems, we can coach you through it. Let me see. The next step here, while the meat is cooking, all those lovely meat juices will go into the beef broth that are made with bones and meat on them still, and seasonings. My basic parsley, sage, and rosemary, a little bit of olive oil so that the bones don't burn, and you roast carrots and onions and celery with it, and then you can tip that into a nice big stock pot, cover the bones with water, add in a bottle of your choice of red wine, or leave it out, and simmer that for a good 4 to 6 hours. Let it reduce, and then you strain it all and let it cool, and then you partially defat it. You don't want to completely defat it because, say it with me, fat is flavor. And yeah, it is. I don't use I being allergic to garlic, you would not believe how many things garlic is in. Um, it's in every soup you can find. It's in every broth you can find. It's in TV dinners. It's in everything. So I basically make almost everything that we eat. If it's not for me, I can take shortcuts. But if it is for me, yeah, I can't. So it's a good thing I like cooking. Let's put it that way. So, all right, that is continuing to simmer. And as you see, here's my big bottle of water. And yeah, kids are allergic. Food allergies in particular are just not fun. There's just no way to get around them, and it's, a lot of people, they don't understand that. The food industry is really starting to learn that, since, peanut allergies in particular are getting to be so, prevalent now. But most places you go, if you tell them that you have a food allergy to something, they're pretty good about it. Garlic kind of stymies them, because once they season something with garlic and put it on their grill, they'd have to clean the grill. And yeah, so that just takes a little bit of thought on my part. Or I can ask them, what can you make without garlic? Can you poach this fish instead of grill it? Can you, you know, can you make that pasta sauce without it? Is that something that you make per dish, or is it, big batch restaurant dishes that they make of pasta or something? Um, Never made beef broth. Beef broth is, Tina Bug, is actually one of the more fun ones to make. Um, a lot of my memories of cooking, I didn't learn making broth from my grandmother, oddly enough. I learned that when, after my cousin, who was a year and a half younger than me and my partner in culinary crime, when she got married, she realized that she spent all her time with grandma learning how to cook cakes and pies and breads. And I focused on, the meat and the potatoes, the actual meals. And Tara had no idea how to cook. She had like one dish or two dishes she could make, but other than that, she was completely unprepared to be the source of food for a family. So I said, don't worry about it. I tell you what, I'll come up twice a week. I said, I'll come up twice a week, and in those 2 days a week, I will teach you how to cook. We're going to start with, let's make broth, and then we're going to make soups, because soup is darn good food. I mean, you can even have it for breakfast, and it's just lovely stuff. So I looked up how to make beef broth, and I turned to my original Bible, The Joy of Cooking, and I simplified it by taking out a lot of the ingredients that I didn't really think needed to be in there, including garlic. And I spent the next 10 years teaching her to cook, just like Grandma taught me. And in that time, we made pasta, and we made every kind of soup you could think of, from chowders to vegetable beef to beef stews. I started being confident enough to create my own recipes by then and write them down. And I have a fairly good palate, so I have done naughty things like go to restaurants, and if I find a recipe that I can eat and I like, I can generally figure out what seasonings are in it, and I can copycat it fairly easily. So I have done that, and changed the recipes to be a little more to my taste. So I've done that in several cases, and in some cases I just got a wild hair and decided to just start creating something. Um, my spiced pumpkin cider that a few of you have tried. I know at least that Frumpy has tried it. Um, that was just I want something that isn't terribly sweet, is like hot cider, but isn't appley. I wanted something more autumnal, so I was thinking pumpkin. And the pumpkin recipe was just, I put it together, what goes in a pumpkin pie? Well, in my pumpkin pie, you've got pumpkin puree, you've got cinnamon, you've got cloves, and you have ginger. So I decided, well, let's get something that we can make in a crock pot. And I took a gallon of apple cider. Unfiltered apple cider is especially nice. It tends to have less sugar in it, so it's less sweet. I should also say I'm diabetic, so this is also kind of important. And then I added in between half and 3/4 of a cup of pumpkin puree, because I didn't want this to be thick. I didn't want it to be pie in a cup. So whisked that together and made sure it wasn't really thick. And then I added in cinnamon sticks and whole cloves, and I added in a whole knob of ginger, about the size of your thumb, a little less than the size of your thumb, peeled that down, and threw it in the crock pot for about 20 minutes on high, and then it can just sit there and steam and stay warm. And you can serve it then with whipped cream on the top if you want to have it be a little creamy, and you can eat it just as it is, or you can spike it with some brandy. That's especially fine as well. Whiskey also works. And this is coming along nicely. All right. So I'm just kind of babbling, unfortunately, telling you about myself. Some of you are familiar with me already from being the only deaf guy's one of his mods. And and I have also been around modding for various different other people. Is it sound or? Oh, thank you, Frumpy. Well, like I said, this is a test stream, and we're doing this with the equipment we already have. I'm using a gaming headset. I know I need to get a microphone, and the volume and clarity will improve then. We need to get a better setup so that I have more than one camera, so that we actually have, a better view. And yeah, having two places to look at the same time, so you can look at me and I can show you the food that's cooking, and having a bigger area to do that in would also be pretty darn wonderful. I am going to remove this from the heat for a second and just check. It's a bit tough. One of the things you need to do regularly is test the flavor of things. So I've got a little bit of the broth here. It's not bad. I don't cook with a lot of salt. My mother is on a restricted salt diet, so I've gotten out of the habit. And oddly enough, for all that I've already put in here, that quarter teaspoon of salt is more than enough because the broth was already made seasoned. Um, well, the problem is that this is done on a board that is actually fireproof, and I got it for when I was taking goldsmithing courses in college. And I've just sort of kept it over the years, and this is actually being done on top of a TV tray. And the TV tray is nowhere near the size of this, 3.5 foot wide, 2 foot deep board. So, can everybody hear me well enough? Okay, great. All right. So I started developing my own recipes. I started writing them down, and I kind of went through this. I was just going to put it out for the family because I didn't want family to lose the recipes that everybody loved. And that was something that was pretty important to me because I'd already gone through that whole losing everybody's favorite recipes. And I didn't want to have that happen again. I don't have children. I never will. My recipes will be passed down in a cookbook. I am now making the thickener for the gravy, which is roughly half a cup at this point of water and half a cup of flour. You want to keep your ratios the same. What you're actually doing is making a slurry. You would do the same thing if you were going to use cornstarch and water. And cornstarch is another thing, especially if you have, if you're allergic to wheat, you would probably want to do that instead of using flour. And it would thicken. And it turns more clear than I find gravy actually turns if you're using flour because, well, the flour's opaque. It just never will be anything different. So I'm going really high tech here. I've got a measuring cup, and I've got water and flour in it, and because I am doing this on the limited magnanimity of my husband, I'm just using a fork to whisk it up rather than an actual whisk. It's just easier. And this can go spectacularly wrong if you're not careful with it. You will make, you'll make little dumplings instead of gravy. But generally, make sure that your broth is simmering, as this was, as you can see. And if you are pretty careful about it and start cooking it right away and stirring it right away, as you can see, it's already thickening. Doesn't that look nice? This is not hard food to make. This is just using your leftovers. So, we have got this lovely pound of stew meat from a donor cow, shall we say, from the family. And it's got half of a sweet onion, and it's got about 8 ounces of mushrooms in it. I usually go mad with the mushrooms, love mushrooms. Can never have enough mushrooms. And so you'll see a lot of mushrooms in my recipes just because I like them. That is basically ready to turn down to low because it just needs to finish cooking the flour within your gravy. It will actually thicken it long before the flour is actually cooked. So again, after you turn it into gravy like this, you need to taste it. And you need to taste it because if it tastes like flour, it's not done. And nothing can ruin a good gravy more than having, this nasty, uncooked bread taste to it. And it's also very important. I mean, even if it is just you, unless it's you cooking only for you, get a clean spoon every time you taste something. Taste regularly. If you find a cook that doesn't taste, run. They don't care about their food. Yep, that still has a little bit of flour taste to it. So we're good. And if the gravy gets too thick while you're waiting for it to finish cooking the flour, just add a little bit of water. Just add it like 2 ounces at a time. Maybe that's a quarter cup. Or, a double shot glass if you have that handy. And that will just thin it down. It will thicken back up again and everything will be fine. Where death meets hedge. Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That is incredibly generous. Thank you. Now, I like to cook when I'm making sandwiches or anything else. I like a bread that will stand up for itself. So I tend to use a lot of artisan breads. They didn't have the bread I really wanted for this, but they have a place down here, and I live in the Seattle area. This is the Seattle International Baking Company, and these are French rolls, and they have the world's best sourdough. And they make this absolutely amazing sourdough that's sourdough wheat bread. So it's not as grainy as a wheat, and it's a little milder than their usual sourdough, and they even have extra sour if you really like old sourdough bread. I like to use their breads because they're an artisan bakery out here, and they stand up better to things. Okay. I need to have a place I can take this off because it is done, and if I tip it too much, it's going to fall. So I'm speaking to my sous chef, my husband Andrew, who is now scurrying around like a little Christmas elf and doing things that are not family friendly. Thank you for staying, Helen. Okay, so I am taking that now, and we are putting the gravy stuff off of that, and I am getting out a lovely little frying pan, non-stick. And where's the margarine, honey? So the first thing you want to do if you're going to make a grilled sandwich is you want to take and you want to open the bread up, and we will take and add some butter to the inside because you want to have it so that it's browned on the inside, browned at least on the inside, and possibly browned on the outside too. If we'd had the sourdough wheat that I had originally hoped for, but the store was out, I would have buttered both sides and started. So you just take and you put it into the pan and you let it start to brown. And keep your eye on it because that little devil will go from absolutely nothing to burned in a flash if you take your eyes off it. Seattle is quite the foodie town. We have all kinds of chefs here. We have all kinds of artisan bakeries and butchers, and we have some of the best seafood in the world. We have fishing fleets that come in every morning at 3 or 4 in the morning and give directly to the fish markets. And so you go down there. I mean, everybody, I'm pretty sure, at least in America, knows about the flying fish in the Pike Place Market. That is a very popular seafood market. However, it is in downtown Seattle. There's no parking. It's horrendously crowded. You got to go at least once. But You get fish that was alive like 3 hours before, and you get to have that in your house. I mean, it's it's less expensive than it is in a lot of places in the world because we are at the port, and it's also incredibly fresh. Um, for those of you that don't know, and I know I'm rambling wildly, seafood should not smell fishy. It should have a clean smell, only a faint trace of fish. If it's an ocean fish, it should have a little bit of a brine smell about it. It has kind of a mineral smell with the brine. And if it's a lake fish, if it's a freshwater fish, it should just smell like water. A little bit of fish, but like water. The flesh of the fish should be firm and plump. If you poke the scales, they shouldn't look dry, and if the gills look dry, if the eyes look dry, if they look shrunken in any way, if you touch the flesh of the fish, it should rebound immediately. It shouldn't have your fingerprint stay in it. And it should not, in any cases, ever have an ammonia smell. That is the fish rotting. And it happens within a couple days, so. Yeah, as they said, it's the rambling. I ramble when I'm nervous, I'm sorry. So, we are now checking the bread. Not quite. I am going to lay out some paper towel here for when I get the bread out. I'm sorry about the track that's going on in the background. I did not know it would be banjos. This is royalty free. I'm talking hometown stuff. I did not intend this to be a comedy track. But it is, and it's funny. So, okay. I'm glad you like the song. It's just, I did not intend for there to be any kind of pacing for it. It's just royalty-free music selections from Spotify. And let's see. All right. There should be that mozzarella that's in the refrigerator too, honey. Mozzarella. It's like pizza cheese. I'm checking the bread. As you can see, we've got a little bit of browning on the inside. It's not quite enough, so I'm gonna put it back in there for a few more, just for another minute. All right. Nervous rambling. Okay. Hi, LD. Welcome in. Welcome everybody who's come. I really appreciate everyone who's come, everyone who has surprisingly tipped, anyone who has. I did not expect to have this many people subscribe to me, especially so soon. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. It's a great shot in the arm. I'm gonna be the next Kinara. I'd be happy just being a hedge pig. So, all right, let's check this again. And we've got better color this time. Yay! So at this point, I am going to get out the second roll because my husband informs me that I have to, that's fine. We'll just use that. I have to make 2 sandwiches, one of them for Instagram and one of them for him to taste on screen and tell you all how wonderful it is. And then after we take a picture and put it up on Instagram, he gets the second sandwich too. So it's apparently the rules. One of the things I love best about cooking is cooking for my family and my friends. And it's mostly been my family over the years. I'm kind of shy. I'd be a lot shyer if you could actually see my face at this point, and you can ask my husband about that. We saw each other full face for the very first time when he came into the country 12 years ago yesterday, actually. He didn't believe me that the web camera that I had at the time couldn't be adjusted any lower, so all he could see was my eyes on the top of my head. He's so suspicious. I am now taking a sandwich while it is hot, and I am putting cheese on it. This has changed because we can't find the mozzarella, to Colby Jack, which is one of our favorite cheeses. It's a lovely cheese you will get to know well because I put it in several of my recipes, including my white chicken lasagna. And it is also featured heavily in my chicken mushroom chowder, which I serve with the cheese melting on top of it. It's insanely good and rich, full of multiple kinds of mushrooms, plump chicken, and a special ingredient that gives it a bit of tang, dill. And hey, Eileen, how are you doing? Thank you for coming in. I have now put the cheese on the sandwich. And at this point, I will take the concoction of, we'll call it pot roast. It's not. It's stew meat that I cooked in front of you all because, well, I didn't have leftovers. And yeah. Anyway, so here's the meat, and you're pushing it out again, okay. I will need to have a plate for you. I'm going to. Here's part of the, okay, that works. And I generally allow anywhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of a pound of meat per sandwich. And that's because my husband is a carnivore. And this is going to be a bit of a gloppy sandwich. You could eat it open-faced, or you could just suck it up and just eat it. The heat of this will basically melt your cheese for you. I am not trying to outdo you in your portioning, Connor. I am not. Okay, a little. So here we have the meat. It is already lopped over onto the paper towel. I am going to try to transfer this to a plate. So there you can see it again, kind of. And we are going to close this. Ow, that is hot. Imagine. I'm going to close this on the bottom side of the bun. Yeah, this may very well be something that must be attacked with a knife and fork. Here is the sandwich. Does that look nice? That is the pot roast or leftover roast beef. That is the onions and mushrooms in a gravy. My husband does not like horseradish. For those of you that do like it, I would recommend adding a little bit of um, creamy horseradish to it. And we can get all of this here in for my husband. I know it's not a pretty plate, but you know what's a pretty plate? One that's empty after they eat it. Okay, honey, come over here and have a taste for everybody. His comment was, that's really nice. There's no such thing as too much cheese unless you're lactose intolerant. I really love horseradish with roast beef, so in my choice, I would make up a horseradish cream by choosing a couple tablespoons of sour cream that you whip until it's nice and fluffy, and then stir in at least a tablespoon of grated horseradish, extra hot in my taste. And you mix that up, let it sit for perhaps an hour in the refrigerator so the tastes have combined. And then add a tablespoon or a teaspoon, however much you like, in the middle of the sandwich. And you're good to go at that point. So let's do up a second sandwich. My husband has retreated to his office with his sandwich. So this will be the one that gets a picture of it on Instagram when it cools enough. And my father and mother will come scrambling out here when stream is over and claim their own sandwiches. My next planned stream is on Tuesday, same time, noon, Pacific. And I am planning on making one of my own recipes that I created. I had a thought as we were thinking of what to do with different leftovers and what to do about Thanksgiving upcoming. And while it was only my husband and I, it was such a big pain in the butt, especially for someone that isn't American and doesn't celebrate our Thanksgiving, for them to have to cook a whole turkey and stuff it and go to all that. And the best thing we do with the turkey anyway is we cut it up in pieces and we put it on top of the stuffing and have mashed potatoes on the side and the vegetables and all. And we take and put gravy over it, and it's basically a casserole at that point. So I decided, what the heck, let's get some turkey breast, and we'll get the stuffing mix and everything that is my family's traditional stuffing. And we put the turkey in it and threw it in the oven, and it took 45 minutes to cook Thanksgiving dinner. How terrible is that? Had all of the taste, had all of the love, almost no cooking cleanup, and so much free time to actually do things that you enjoy. Well, I decided there has to be a way to do something similar with roast beef. Why not do it with roast beef? I had a lot of hamburger, and I just decided, okay, let's try this with roast beef. So I took hamburger and the stuffing, changed the stuffing to suit more of a beef option rather than turkey. And I made the recipe that I will be cooking for you on Tuesday. A little bit of movie magic there. I'm going to cook it up to the point where it goes into the oven, and then I will have a finished one that you can all look at, and I can put gravy over it, and my husband can eat it in front of you again. A lot of my recipes are fairly big. I've always cooked for large families and leftovers, and so the next recipe coming up will feed 10 to 12 people. You can cut it down. I will have a complete recipe up before, and it will be in the stream recipes section of the Discord, and you can cook along with me or cook afterwards if you like how it looks. And it's basically hamburger and lots of mushrooms and some vegetables of various different sorts thrown in on top of a dry cubed bread stuffing, basically bread cubes. And then I use beef broth in it and sear off the hamburger and throw that in on top and mix it through, and into the oven it pops, and you've got a really wonderful, filling, one dish, comforting family meal that freezes beautifully, people. Freezes beautifully. So, sandwich destroyed. Okay, well, that's pretty much it for stream. Thank you all so much for coming. I am just flabbergasted by your response. And please check my Instagram. You'll see pictures that are prettied up a little bit of my food. And check the stream recipes. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And I promise I'll get better cameras and I'll get a better setup, and these will be a lot more professional. But thank you so much for putting up with me and my nervousness. And yeah, why don't we raid Audrey? Can you try putting that through? Oh, thank you so much, Vet, for coming, and Tina and Waffle Mouse, and thank you, my mods, the Frumpy Grumpy, and Connor, the only deaf guy. Hang around for Andrew has to do it. Audrey enjoys. Okay. Day at noon Pacific, and you'll get more of my comfort food. Thank you. Bye-bye.